Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today. Before we begin today's panel, I wanted to officially introduce our Indiana's Partnership Pentagon for Post-Secondary Education. During this morning's keynote, I outlined commission priorities to increase Indiana's educational attainment, strengthen the talent pipeline, and ultimately improve the well-being of our fellow citizens and the state overall. As a reminder, these priority areas are focused on continued improvements to completions, on improving the college going rate, addressing the adult educational attainment rate, and retaining as many college graduates as possible to build a robust talent pipeline for today and tomorrow. Government and education cannot take on these priorities alone. In fact, we are convinced it's going to take a concerted statewide effort to address the issues. And again, I am heartened that so many of you have chosen to join us today. It's imperative to bring employers, community, and philanthropic organizations to the table to join the commission and our institutions in pursuit of Indiana's big goal of at least 60% of Hoosiers having a quality degree or credential beyond high school. The four who are joining us today for this panel are not only leaders in their respective sectors, but have volunteered to represent their fields, education, philanthropy, and community organizations, along with employers, to further our commission priorities and to address the needs of our state. Jose?
Thank you, Commissioner Lowery. Thank you for the introduction of the Indiana's Partner Pentagon. So I would like to start by introducing our panelists today. If you want to introduce yourself, name, title, organization you are with. Claire, we're going to start with you, and then we're going to shift over to our virtual participant.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Claire Fidian-Green. I'm the president and CEO of the Richard M. Fairbanks Foundation. We're a charitable foundation that awards grants. One of our areas of focus is education.
I think I've been introduced earlier today. Hi, I'm Chris Lowery. I serve as Indiana Commissioner for Higher Education.
Good afternoon, and again, thank you for joining. My name is Dan Peterson. I'm Vice President of Industry and Government Affairs for Cook Group, which is the Bloomington-based Cook medical organization here in Indiana and across the globe. So thank you. Also, I guess probably of relevance on the Higher Ed Commission, along with Commissioner Lowery and on the Governor Reports Cabinet.
Marlene?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Marlene Dasso, President and CEO of the Indiana Latino Institute.
And President Rochon.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you all. My name is Ronald Rochon. I serve as president at the University of Southern Indiana in beautiful Evansville. Thank you.
Due to time constraints today, I do have prepared questions for our panelists today. However, if you do have a question you would like to ask our panel, or if there's a thought you would really like to share, we please ask you to use the chat today. We really do want to get to your questions and any thoughts you have regarding post-secondary education. I hate when I forget something I'm going to say. I don't want y'all to deal with that. So my first question is actually directed for you, Claire and Marlene. As this morning's presentation outlined, the value of higher education has been called into question, with many Hoosiers feeling as though the cost of college is too much and not certainly worth it or the return of investment. How can community and philanthropic organizations really engage with audiences they work with to increase the overall value of higher education with those valuable Hoosiers?
Great question. So I think there's no question that there is tremendous value in higher education, whether that's a 2 or a 4-year degree or some kind of certificate or credential. In fact, the need for some kind of post-secondary education is just increasing as we look to what employers need to be competitive in a global marketplace. However, if you were here all from the very beginning of this presentation, you know that we have a large perception problem about the value of higher education. Too many individuals in Indiana don't think that it's worth it to spend the money and take the time to pursue some form of post-secondary education. And so I think there's a huge amount that philanthropy can do in partnership with public sector and community-based organizations. Obviously, as funders, we can better support organizations that are working to communicate with the individuals who are choosing not to enroll in post-secondary education. There's lots of work already happening, and I think philanthropists are well positioned to amplify that work with supportive funding for those organizations. Again, in partnership with what the state of Indiana is already doing under Commissioner Lowery's leadership. The other thing that foundations can consider, and something that the Fairbanks Foundation has done, is funding direct campaigns with media outlets in Indianapolis, such as Radio One, LaVoz, that are communicating to audiences that we are not seeing enrolling in post-secondary education, so that there is more targeted messaging going to them about making sure they complete FAFSA and enroll in post-secondary education. So as funders, I think there's a lot that philanthropy can do to come alongside and support the efforts of the state to get more Hoosiers enrolled in post-secondary education.
Marlene?
Yes, a great question. Today is the first step. We need to have open conversations about the feelings and uncertainties of our young. We need to hear them. These times that we're living is uncertain, and there are a lot of fears, anxiety about whether they should go to college or not. It's an option. It's too expensive. At ILI, we serve the fastest growing Indiana Latino population, which are Latino students. Today, from K to 12, we are the largest minority population in Indiana. Latino students, and I just want to stress this, our Latino students want to go to college, and they still hold great value to education. That's not a question. But the question is, are the systems ready to serve this population? And I do believe that today is a step in the right direction, and we have so much to do to serve all our students. This collaboration, this Pentagon, among all the five sectors, is necessary to ensure that we meet the needs of our students who do not fit the traditional 4-year higher education model. Maybe they fit a 1 or 2 years. So and raise awareness about the opportunities to have a 1-year certification. It's an option, or a 2 years degree. It's not set in the stone that you have to have a 4 years degree.
And then President Roshan, Dan, Commissioner Lowery, do you have anything to add to that?
Well,
I don't. I think we're going to have a couple other questions here. I do want to share with our audience, we're having a little technical difficulty on our end with audio. And so I'm thinking in a moment, one of our colleagues will be able to come in and help us, those of us who are in this room, communicate a little bit better with President Roshan and Marlene.
Yes, I do apologize if you're experiencing some kind of lag, or if you hear some beeping up in the background. The mic is really sensitive, so we're picking that up right now. Commissioner Lowery and President Roshan, while the pandemic certainly exacerbated the issue of, we've been hearing from employers that, especially recently, that we can't find the talent here in Indiana for the workers that we need currently in the workforce. What role does higher education play in this issue, and what's one strategy that you and your members of your industries, government, and education can implement to address the concerns of Hoosier employers?
President Roshan, if you would like to go first, that would be great.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. There are a couple of things that I think about, and even with the previous question, I think that a lot of this has to do with exposure. How we provide community members with access to understanding what possibilities really look like. I'll tell you right now that overwhelmingly, when we talk about students of color in the state of Indiana, students who are coming from underserved communities, quite often access to role models and to individuals who look like them, individuals who they can have intentional touches with, individuals who understand their narrative, understand their community, their zip code, the challenges and opportunities that are provided, quite often are not there for them and directly. And so ways in which we can address that issue, I think, is going to assist us the way Marlene and Claire were addressing this issue. I will tell you real quickly that for the audience, higher education transformed my life. I'm the first one to go to college in my family. It opened doors not only for myself, but for every member of my family. People began to really think differently about even their own possibilities, their own confidence, access, beginning to think about academic discipline very differently, building confidence in themselves and finding their own purpose and also their own passion in academics. So listen, I am a firm believer in higher education. I'm a firm believer in secondary credentials. I'm a firm believer in two-year institutions. Whatever we can do to provide people with access to educational opportunities will only enhance the state of Indiana and beyond. So let me stop there. Marlene and Claire, you all got me excited as I heard you both speak. Real quickly though, one other avenue with regard to industry and collaboration and skill sets, I believe it's necessary for us as leaders to really work with CEOs, finding out exactly what they're missing within their industries, what they're needing, from candidates who will be applying and impacting their bottom line. Quite often, I'm hearing people even talk about something that seems soft because they call it soft skills, but they're very, very important skills: communication, um, punctuality, professionalism, understanding how to be prepared for the next day with regard to, solution building, solution finding, these things. And I'll tell you one other thing that I think that employers are really looking for is attitude. Someone who appreciates the opportunity to impact that industry. People are trusting all of us to come into the space to work. I'm a steward of the University of Southern Indiana. I may be president, but I'm nothing but a steward of this institution. The attitude that I bring will attract other families and other students to this place. So working with CEOs throughout the state of Indiana has been very important to me. Just recently, I was at Toyota and Deaconess, meeting with those CEOs, finding out what other things we could bring to our students, our candidates, as they approach those gates of opportunity. I think those relationships, those listening sessions, and most importantly, understanding exactly what's going on within those industries beyond the day-to-day typical is extremely important with regard to overall and future success.
Thank you, President Rashawn. Commissioner Lowery?
Well, President Rashawn, I think what I'll do is just second that motion. There's so much there that is of just great value. I've spent a lot of time with President Rashawn and on the campus, and I see that interaction. I see his gift of serving as a steward for the University of Southern Indiana. And his work with employers, I again have seen it firsthand, even in recent weeks while spending time with him and employers. What I'll try to do is add a little bit of addition to that. Relationship development, really to which President Rashawn was referencing, is absolutely critical in creating and leveraging solutions in the talent pipeline. I'm absolutely convinced that government and higher education can support this work and encourage this work through what we're referring to as the 3 Ps, and I'll mention it again later, really through policies, programs, and really deep partnerships. I'll use one example, and that's with work and learn experiences. Whether those are mentorships, internships, co-ops, apprenticeships, anywhere on that work and learn scale, they just lead to a much higher likelihood of not only student engagement, but frankly, student success in the classroom, better understanding where she or he sees herself or himself heading, and ultimately job offers. It's a statistical fact that work and learn experiences encourage that. So with that in mind, education leaders like President Rashawn and others have to be really proactive and intentional in forming relationships with presidents. In fact, I've been wanting to say for the last several months to education leaders, how close and how good are your relationships with employers, including with their leaders? And similarly, with employers, to solve the talent pipeline, you got to be in the game. So what are your relationships with those education leaders? What do the partnerships look like? Government can encourage and incentivize this work by convening just like this today, by setting goals, stretch goals, I might add, in specific areas like performance funding, and utilizing and supporting tools like Earn Indiana, which I would have to say firsthand, I was able to utilize in my days back in the corporate world with Hillenbrand. It just takes time. I saw the results and others have seen the results for years in adapting to and developing those relationships. So those relationships matter, and ultimately we have to be intentional about the outcomes for students, employers, institutions, and communities. And I would only slightly build on, because I know we need to go to the next question, the point that President Rashan was taking and making about the engagement of employers with our institutions, leaders, faculty, and staff to make sure that what we're offering is meeting the needs of today and tomorrow in the business community.
Commissioner Lowery and President Rashan shared some ideas on how to strengthen that talent pipeline here in Indiana. However, I want to go to our corporate representative, Dan Peterson. How can companies better engage with students at both the post-secondary and secondary levels? Is there an opportunity for collaboration with any of the industries here today to increase that engagement?
Absolutely. I think there can be and there must be engagement in many different levels and both with secondary and post-secondary education, adult workforce education, and the like. I mean, I've heard from everyone here about the Pentagon and the collaboration amongst the different entities and organizations that need to be involved in our communities, and employers just have to be in that mix. In the old days, you know, I think about back when I was young, and you think about education, you always heard about reading, writing, and arithmetic. And then as you got older, then this phrase that I remember becoming more popular was, especially at a higher ed level, rigor, relevance, and relationships. And I think in particular, from an employer standpoint, we can and should and need to do more of bringing the relevance piece to our students and to the educators to help really make a connection for why students need to continue their education, why they need to continue and go down a path of lifelong learning. I mean, it's certainly about the degrees and about completion, but at the end of the day, it's also, and more importantly, about what folks learn and how they're able to learn and continue to learn in a rapidly changing environment where all the tools exist to help do that. But they have to understand the value of that education that they are building upon and how it allows them and helps them meet their career objectives and their potential. And so I think that can't be done, as Chris and others have said, that can't be done by one silo of the Pentagon or one side of the Pentagon. It has to be all of us, I think, working together to do that. And I think employers have a lot to bring to the table from that standpoint. I think it's especially important for all of us to figure out ways of helping and helping engage employers, helping provide easy access and easy abilities for employers to engage with their education and workforce partners. You think about the majority of the companies and employers in Indiana are not the big cooks of the world. They're the small and mid-sized companies that don't have big talent departments and lots of resources. And that's a challenge, but it's also, there are a lot of ways I think that ability to engage can be made an easy choice and not be a really difficult choice. And I think it's definitely to our employers' benefits to get involved with their education partners in their own ability to recruit people. The earlier we can get in front of students to, again, bring that relevance piece to students through just work-based learning, any number of engagement opportunities with students, the more that's going to help us as employers meet the opportunities that we have on our table, if you will, with our own industry sectors and where they're going. So fully endorse the Pentagon and fully endorse the importance of all of us engaging in this.
Thank you, Dan. Very well said. And I do really like the redefining of the 3 R's. I love that, especially that they all start with an R now. Love that. So shifting a little bit, while improving Indiana's attainment rate is critical to meeting our state's workforce needs, it's equally important that we are focused on retaining those college graduates. So Indiana's ranked 14th best at attracting people to come to our state to go to college or university, but we're 40th at retaining those college graduates. President Rashan, how can institutions better communicate the benefits of staying in Indiana after graduation? And as a follow-up, Claire, how can the state better position itself with those college graduates?
You know, I think, again, it kind of goes back to what I really believe in, and that's these relationships with employers. different agencies across community, finding ways in which we can really bring young talent to the forefront much earlier. My daughter's a recent graduate. She's a 23-year-old young woman who is learning her new space with regard to professional work. She's been used to having this college life, this college schedule, and now she's acclimating herself. Well, I would tell you that many students or former students like my daughter, they have amazing talent, but find themselves becoming a little impatient because they want to advance very quickly. And so if there are ways in which we can tap into that talent, give them an understanding of what that roadmap looks like with regard to the possibility of them advancing, contributing, sitting at board tables, understanding how to develop new initiatives and policy and even proposals for the agency. I think we will be much more successful at retaining this amazing, brilliant talent that we have in the state of Indiana. I cannot underscore the significance of them seeing other young professionals who have advanced quite centrally in their circle. That messaging, that optic does amazing things with regard to them believing that it is possible for them as well. And then real quickly, I want to go back to a point that Marlene had made earlier with regard to the value of education and advancement among people of color. Really providing them an opportunity to understand that they too, within majority white agencies and institutions, they too can contribute. They too can advance. They too can create policy and new ways of thinking and behaving and enhancing the state. People want to enhance their families and their communities. And quite often, because we haven't seen them present, we have this kind of counter narrative or understanding of who they are and what they want to do. So I'll stop there, but I think that, this relationship piece, can't be underscored enough.
Well, President Rochon, I couldn't agree more. The relationship piece is incredibly important, and I will just expand upon that to say I think there's two things that I would recommend that we as a state think about doing even more than we currently are. The first is around career exposure and work-based learning opportunities for Hoosiers. So with our existing student population, and really that needs to start as early as elementary school to help children understand the vast array of wonderful career opportunities that existed in Indiana. There was a study that Central Indiana Corporate Partnership did a number of years ago that found that one of the reasons college graduates leave and go to other states is that they simply aren't aware of the opportunities here within our own state. So clearly there is an opportunity to strengthen partnerships and relationships between schools starting in K-12 and post-secondary institutions and our own employers by very structured career exposure opportunities as well as work-based learning experiences. And those really need to start in high school. The Fairbanks Foundation has been a champion of and is now funding an initiative in Marion County as well as a statewide community of practice that Commissioner Lovers is a part of for Modern Youth Apprenticeship, which starts in the 11th grade and continues for a year after high school graduation, where a student gets paid, they get college credit, they get industry credentials, they get career exposure, and they're providing an ROI to the company that's much more likely to result in them either extending on their post-secondary education after that experience is over, but more importantly, staying in Indiana and seeing that there are wonderful career opportunities for them here. Now, in terms of the college students that we attract to Indiana, we attract a lot of them. Again, I think the answer is really structured work-based learning experiences for college students where they can see, I want to build my career here in Indiana. So that's co-ops, that's internships, that's the vast array of work-based learning experiences that we really need to be exposing all of our college students to so that they feel excited about their opportunities here after graduation. So that's one very important thing that I think employers need to be doing better with post-secondary education institutions, with K-12 institutions in Indiana. The second thing, though, is that college graduates really care about quality of life. So we need to really be amplifying the messaging around quality of life that exists here in all of our communities in the state of Indiana. We have wonderful things that happen here in Indiana, and we are too modest. We don't tell that story the way that we need to. So we need to tell that story. Let's not be shy about it. And I think that employers and post-secondary institutions can help tell that story about the many wonderful quality of life opportunities that are available if somebody decides to stay in Indiana and make this their home after graduation from college. I do think we need to think about other investments in things like bike lanes, public transit, and those things that Gen Z is looking for. Those
Mhm.
things matter a lot when they are making decisions about where they want to have their career. So those are two things that I think Indiana needs to continue to do and really expand its efforts if we're going to retain our college graduates in Indiana.
Claire, I love those contributions. That everything you said was brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Indiana's adult learner population is vital, so if we can attain our state's attainment goal rate. Currently, there are 2 million adult Hoosiers who don't have a credential. Commissioner Lauer and Dan Peterson, how can your respective sectors engage with this population, and what resources are available for these adult students?
I'll go first, but only to set up my friend Dan to really go first. You know, so a lot of people know this, probably many though don't know this. Dan and his employer, in my view, have been absolutely leading the way in reaching adults in our state. Many of you know I spent 20 years in advanced manufacturing, and I have an observation that Toyota some decades ago changed it with lean, the Toyota lean production principles. I truly believe that the work Cook has been doing with My Cook Pathway, reaching into the community, reaching their own employees, their families, is of that magnitude and of that scale. And so that's sort of my introduction to Dan, to think about that for a moment, because I think they just have something golden they've been doing. Literally, the commitment is unparalleled. And I hope Dan talks a little bit about what they're doing at Cook.
Well, how would I not, now that you set me up like that?
Made it impossible for you, Dan.
Right?
Yeah.
No, I'm happy to talk. And, yeah, I appreciate the, you know, the opportunity to talk about it. I appreciate the reference to My Cook Pathway. Our president and CEO, Pete Youngman, and his leadership team, in particular, Nikki James, who leads that, the people side of our business, and many, many others, have really, in my mind, just knocked it out of the park, as it relates to the development of a program that meets people where they are and helps them make the right choice, in my mind, makes the right choice for them to continue their education, makes that choice the easy choice, not the hardest choice. Quite often we have great intentions, but we put all these barriers in the way unintentionally and we wonder why folks don't take advantage of that. So give great credit. I'm an evangelist for the work we're doing, if you will. So I love getting out and talking about this because I'm so passionate about it, and it is really making a difference. So we have multiple aspects of the My Cook Pathway program. The ones I think that are most relevant here, which again are all focused on the adult workforce, whether they be someone who hasn't yet come to Cook for a career or is already working at Cook and wants to advance their career. One example, one component of the My Cook Pathway program is our high school equivalency program, where you come to work for Cook. We pay you for 40 hours a week of work. You work 20 hours of that week in either our cafeteria or our janitorial departments, if you will. The other 20, you study for your high school equivalency with a tutor and coach. And then you work through that process. We pay for you to take the high school equivalency test, Once you complete that, you then move into any number of positions within the company across the board with full benefits and full opportunities, just like anyone else. So you come to Cook without a high school diploma or equivalency and begin your career. And then other components of the program include a tuition assistance program in partnership with Ivy Tech and other higher ed institutions, where you can then further your educational pathway and career through associate's degrees, bachelor degrees, certificates, master's degrees. We work with a lot of different partners to help facilitate that. One of the key things we do, we either pay for that upfront or we work with the institution to defer payment until successful completion of the class. And then we support that financially. So it's not the employee who has to, front load the cost of that, which we found, should seem obvious, but we found through a lot of discussions with employees that Pete and many others of us have had, that was a big barrier. We went from having, under 100 employees globally that were taking advantage of our older, more traditional tuition reimbursement program. We went to to basically under 100 to close to 1,000 at any one point in time that are taking advantage of this. So bottom line, you can come to Cook with no high school diploma and come on, go through our My Cook Pathway programs, and there's other elements of that, and basically go all the way, get your master's for no out-of-pocket, for basically some fees here and there through the institution. But yeah, I mean, it's an amazing deal. And we find that, you know, meeting those folks halfway, if you will, or meeting them where they are, was the key to doing this. And these are not terribly challenging programs to facilitate and set up. We learn from others. There are others that are doing components of that. So, you know, stand on the shoulders of others and learn from them and make it happen. And it's definitely, it's just, yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I don't blame you for being an evangelist about that program. Sounds wonderful. And thank you, Commissioner Lowery, for setting up for that alley-oop. I'm so glad you shared that.
That's
And
nice.
everyone,
Well, thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
our audience got to hear that. So I'm really enjoying this conversation, but unfortunately, it's time to get to our last question. And this one's for you, Commissioner Lowery. What role do you foresee Indiana's Pentagon partners playing in the future of the commission's work, and how do you plan on keeping those members engaged?
Yeah, Jose, thank you. You know, suggesting and moving forward with this Pentagon idea was a bit different. But I would contend, and hopefully everyone listening in today sees why we're doing this. I was sitting here making notes. My friends know I'll take a lot of notes, and there were just so many things that Marlene and President Rashawn and Claire and Dan mentioned, which just are evidence as to why we're doing this. You know, whether it's the importance of recognizing that individuals who are part of underserved populations are in the room and at the table during education, during their abilities to find great employment and to stick around Indiana, you know, career exposure, things like the Modern Youth Apprenticeship. By the way, Claire was very humble about it. Her organization has been sponsoring that work for the last several years, and it's absolutely remarkable. Something I hear throughout these kind of conversations and observed a little bit this morning is Hoosier modesty. You know, being willing to talk about an incredible program as an employer, being willing to talk about our wonderful communities and our wonderful state, what it has to offer, certainly places where we need to make improvements, but to hold those graduates here, to get them to stay here. The governor's told me I can't put up roadblocks at graduation time every May. So we've got to treat this a bit differently. And I think part of it is we have to show folks why this is so important. I'm a real believer in collective impact. And if you think of the 5 sides, if we add all of those together, you know, what we really come up with is a force multiplier effect. You know, the potential to reach more Hoosiers who aren't reached as they should be today with the college going rate as youth, reaching adults who we are not reaching, and to help them persist, to help them complete, and then embrace career opportunities. I mentioned this earlier today, a couple times now, policies, programs, and partnerships. You know, I observed being somewhat engaged with this, but observed during the recent pandemic and the, you know, the horrible things that came with that, you know, from a health standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint, workforce standpoint for far too many folks. Something that was just really enlightening, and it gave me a lot of hope. And I'll illustrate this example to share with you why others and I observed the impact of this Pentagon. A few months into the Pentagon, there was a group in Indiana calling themselves the Rapid Recovery Team, and they came together. Government in this Pentagon agreed to treat a government program, Workforce Ready Grants, a little bit differently and how tuition and fees were reimbursed to individuals. In addition, government agreed to utilize a list of individuals in our state who had recently been impacted by unemployment. Individuals who were hit hard, they were hit first, and they were the last who were likely to come back into the workforce. So then along with that, we had education coming to the fore and stepping up. Institutions like Ivy Tech and Vincennes who said, we can adapt, we'll adapt quickly, we'll help bring programs forward that'll get folks back in the game as quickly as possible. Well, then we had community organizations. One example was Shepherd Community here in Indianapolis, who said, we can probably reach folks on the Near East Side more easily than government and education and others. And they did that. And then we had trusted partners as employers stepping up. One who they may or may not be on the call today was One America, who said, yeah, if we can reach folks, help them get this training, help them succeed. And by the way, we'll help them succeed in the process. We'll have jobs ready to hire them. For example, moving folks from a service industry job to one, frankly, with one of the best corporate citizens and partners in Indiana, One America. And then, of course, we had philanthropy. Philanthropy like the Fairbanks Foundation doing so much quiet work. I dare risk even mentioning them, but in this instance, Strata Education stepped forward and said, so how can we help folks with career services and planning? So you saw government, education, business, community faith-based organizations, and our friends in philanthropy all stepping forward. The impact was huge. It was fast. It was significant. And on a variety of fronts, analysts across the country have said, I don't believe that's the singular reason, but I think there's something in that secret sauce that Indiana was one of the states that recovered among the fastest from those standpoints in our state. It fills me with pride to have witnessed that. And it just also builds in me a lot of hope that when I see folks like Marlene Dotson, President Rashawn, Claire Fittian Green, Dan Peterson answering the call, we ask each of them if they might consider being leaders in this new strategic vision and approach. And quite frankly, Jose, I really didn't even get the question out of my mouth before each of those individuals said, I'm in, what are we going to do? So, I see that as a possibility in every one of our communities, with every one of our institutions, right? We know what the lift is, but we know where Indiana is and benefits of this incredible state, the economy on which we're going to be able to build. So, with that, I just see great potential in this. I'm convinced we're only beginning this. Folks will hear more. In fact, you'll all be asked in one way or another to participate. And my hope is things you've heard today, whether it's from our higher ed institutions, whether it's from community organizations like the Indiana Latino Institute, Fairbanks Foundation, Cook Medical, what we're trying to do in partnership in government, the commission, Governor's Workforce Cabinet, et cetera, the folks will try to replicate, R&D, if you will, right? In terms of taking ideas, perhaps best practices, and building upon them in each of our communities. So with that, Jose, I guess I'll just provide a couple quick last points to my fellow panelists on the screen and here in the room today, friends. I just want to thank you for joining today. And I also want to thank you, Jose, for moderating this. You're very good at this. We're looking for the Emmy coming forth. But also, very importantly, thank the hundreds of people who've been attending this convening for the last 6 hours or so. I had no idea what to expect with the first education value convening in Indiana. And I'm pleased. Now, next year, we'll have to increase those numbers, and hopefully we'll have some very good results to share at that time. So thank you all. Thanks for everything you're doing each day to serve our fellow Hoosiers. Let's do so in collaborative partnership. Let's see the collective impact. Let's see the force multiplier. And I'm just grateful for what you do. Best wishes for a joyous holiday season.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes our education value convening. You can check all the presentations and recordings that we gave today on our commissioner website that I'm sure one of our colleagues will share shortly. Thank you so much, and a happy holiday season.